Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Beyond Packaging, a show where we talk about packaging products and everything in between. I'm your host, Laura Foti.
And still here, the co-host, Matthew Wright. Good to be here with Laura.
Matthew, we've got some great topics today, things that you and I are passionate about. One of the things we disagree on, but that's okay. We agree to disagree. And that is my love of cheese. Really excited about our first story, Baby Bell, which is the iconic, single serve cheese. They've been an industry disruptor in many ways, certainly a beloved brand. They're moving from compostable cellophane to fully recyclable paper packaging globally by 2027. This article was in Good Housekeeping. Of course, when we talk about the cellophane, it's the red wax. It's that iconic package.
Yeah, and I got to disagree with you. It's not that you and I disagree on cheese. It's cheese and I disagree. So in clarity. But, if you look at like the 20, and I love this article, the 20-year span, I would say they're in the top 20 most iconic brands in terms of packaging. I mean, over the long term. And to your point, it's such a, you can tell the cheese out of the whole cheese department by that red packaging. So it's a really interesting story and the transition they're going through.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what was interesting that you'll certainly appreciate is, they talked about this isn't just a packaging change. This is about food safety. We've got to think about the whole product quality, production, consumption process. So Matthew, walk us through, what does that really mean? Making a change like this, how intensive is that really?
Yeah, well, if you think about it, it's direct contact packaging, right? I mean, that's the most high bar there is. The cheese itself is sitting against the packaging and it's part of the packaging. And as you know, in that type of cheese, even though I don't eat it, I've been around it, is you open the package and consume the cheese kind of simultaneously. And it's especially in the small, single serve sizing that there is. So it is a very complicated process in terms of making that product safe to touch the package and then ultimately to be consumed out of the packaging. And so there's a lot of barriers and things to think through before just changing, not just the brand impact to your point, but the whole, and it's going to be the whole manufacturing, the whole distribution, and the whole, safety and awareness of what they're doing is, we're going to talk about this in a few minutes with our guests, but it's a really complicated process to do this change you're talking about.
Yeah, well, huge kudos to the team. I'm excited to try out that new packaging. I think it's a little ways out, but very exciting to see that update.
Let me know how it goes.
Yeah, we'll do. This second article is something that I know is near and dear to your heart. This was in the Packaging Post, all about how packaging compliance is going digital in 2026. Evidence trail, QR codes, kind of the end of this greenwashing claims. Matthew, how do you feel about this? You've been talking about digital packaging specs for a while now.
Yeah, it's been a little while, but and continue to speak about kind of where the world's going in this regard. I think, listen, it's long past overdue. I think many years ago people glommed on to some form of green statements or sustainability statements that are really hard to back up if you don't have a digital visual imagery of what's going on and where it's all connected to. And I don't think it necessarily that companies, I always think the better of people is, I don't think necessarily companies were doing it purposely. I think in a lot of cases they didn't know. They didn't know what their vendors or packaging were doing. They don't know where that product was ultimately coming from at a raw material stage. And so I think today, obviously, this is just going to be the beginning of what's going to be a rapid change of digitization of all packaging from, all the way from, ground up raw materials, converters, distribution, packing facilities. All that information needs to be known today. And I think that's where we're headed and where we're feeling it certainly today at Specright.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a great kind of, I don't want to call it a call to action, but kind of, and I'll just read this, in quotes. For packaging teams, digital compliance is not a software project. It's an operating model. I love that, right?
Yeah, totally.
It's like, yeah, you need to implement software, but it's changing how you think about your packaging, your data, your processes. That's not a quote. Okay. This article, Packaging Post, says the winners in 2026 will be companies that can connect three things. First thing, packaging master data. We talk about this all the time, right? It's specs. It's the components, the weights, the formats, inks, adhesive, barrier layers. Second thing, supplier evidence. You just mentioned that. The certificates, the recycled content declaration, test reports. So it's having the data, having the documentation, and then the customer-facing communication. This article calls out harmonized labels, sorting instructions, where allowed, QR codes linking to substantiation. I mean, this reminds me so much of the great partnership we have with Sustainable Packaging Coalition on how to recycle, right? Consumers want to have a label. They want to do the right thing. And wow, in order to generate that label, you've got to give how to recycle your specs. So really excited. I do feel like we're at the center of enabling this for a lot of customers, but it's exciting to see this continue to get more and more awareness in the press.
Yeah, no, and I think you nailed it. You know the difference. And I think it's changing over time, but you could tell when we sit in customer meetings, which ones are doing it just because they have to digitize something, and which ones are doing it to be transformational in their business. And those that are doing it the second way are really going to be progressing faster through this new kind of era we're in.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, speaking of new era and progressing faster, we have a very special guest on the podcast who's really focusing on enabling change for her customers. She is an artwork project lead at Complete Acuity and spends her days overseeing packaging transition for CPG companies. Packaging transitions, as I'm sure you've lived through, Matthew, are among the most common, complex, and error-prone processes in the industry. And Complete Acuity is the only firm in the USA that manages this process exclusively. So all they do is focus on these packaging transitions. We're thrilled to welcome Maureen Dollard to the podcast. Maureen, welcome.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
And where does this podcast find you today?
Today I'm in Toronto, Canada.
Awesome. It sounds like you're maybe on the ground floor of one of those packaging transitions right now.
Pretty much.
Awesome. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey in the packaging space. What pulled you into this kind of critical gap?
Well, as a brand manager, I worked on countless packaging transitions, and I knew how much information, how much detail was required. And these projects often landed in addition to my day-to-day responsibilities. And as companies become more streamlined and individuals have more responsibilities, I just saw it as an opportunity to offer my expertise in this industry.
Awesome. When you say packaging transition, a lot comes to my mind, I'm sure Matthew's, but would love to hear in your own words, what do you consider a packaging transition, and are there more happening today perhaps than a few years ago?
Well, I think a packaging transition, simply put, is when new information has to be updated on a company's packaging, and that information has to be communicated to consumers. And just in today's environment, there's more and more regulatory, recycling, label changes, and so probably more than ever, there's a lot of packaging changes happening.
Yeah, absolutely. I hear all about there's constantly a new claim that, the marketing team is like, we've got to put this on front of pack. And I'm like, I've never heard of this stuff. So yeah, I certainly empathize with folks on the brand side. You've talked about packaging transitions and that they're one of the most error-prone processes in CPG. What often goes wrong?
Well, there's a number of things. First off, I think you have to have a clear and complete scope of work. So just have a good understanding of what the changes are going to be. There are often multiple changes. Also having dedicated resources for this packaging change. Also having a good understanding of your die lines. Companies change die lines on an ongoing basis. It could be because of a printer change. It could be change in the packaging, a change at the plant level. So there's quite a few details to be considered.
Yeah, absolutely. Matthew, I know you've dealt with die lines.
Yeah, a few times in my life in different directions, but no. And I think to Maureen's point, the change, and that's what I talk a lot about is, historically, the consistency saved a lot of the gaps in process or the gaps in data, because if it was the same package for many years by the same supplier going to the same place with a forgiving supply chain, it was all kind of forgotten. But today, with the dynamic changes and quite frankly, anytime you introduce change, whether it's a graphic change, a size change, a material change, all that has great risk around it, especially if you don't have any form of true digitized single source of truth. So no, I appreciate the role that you're in, Maureen, and certainly you've probably seen as many or more challenges that I have, and that's what got you in the spot you're in. So congratulations to helping solve this problem.
Thank you.
Matthew, what was the worst mistake that you ever made because of this?
I mean, there's so many. I've written some in the book, and one of them is with a really expensive product that was going to 6 different countries. It's a compost that goes into resins for hazardous materials, and we changed the labeling, and unfortunately, we changed the labeling incorrectly for all 6 products that were air freighted around the world. So it was a little bit of a challenge to fix that. We ended up printing new labels, having them hand applied, and 6 different countries to try to rectify the problem quickly. But those are one of those that you don't sleep for about a week until it's all settled back down again. So the best idea is to avoid them and do it the right way when you do transitions and have professionals doing it. So.
Well, it's a great point. I mean, you are literally dealing with hazardous materials. That's that's really bad. But even
a little stressful.
Yeah, it sounds a little stressful. But even for a consumer brand, there could be safety implications, right? Especially as we look at allergens, things like that. So yeah, the severity of this stuff, it really does matter. Maureen, are there small changes that you've seen that also lead to these kind of big downstream consequences? I love the example Matthew just gave.
I'm not sure that there's a small packaging transition. I think one of the smallest things that you can probably update on your artwork is your domicile information. But quite often, as I mentioned before, companies tend to do multiple updates at the same time. And just because of the process that's involved, there's always an implication, like first you have to determine what your scope of work is, and then supply chain will kick it off and look at the run-out schedule, because you want to run out your components as much as possible because you don't want to incur those write-offs. Then you meet with the team regularly to make sure that all the steps are covered off, whether it's the creation of component numbers, updating of BOMs, the regulatory information has to be updated. And then the brand lead or the artwork project lead, myself or someone taking on that role, they then gather all that information from the cross-functional teams, and then they initiate the artwork brief. And then the artwork, once it's updated from our print management agency or the graphic designer, will start routing.
Wow.
It's a horrible...
sounds hard.
Laura knows my horrible analogies, but changing packaging is kind of like when you renovate a house. You just don't know what's behind it and until you get into it. And certainly it ends up being more expensive, longer to do. So I think what you were just saying, Maureen, which I think is totally appropriate, is mapping out that change process and understanding what are the variables for impact, such as machinery, runnability, run out of inventory, all these things that are kind of not really thought of when you think, I'm just going to change the graphics or color or structure or something. But there is, I think that's the value of having somebody with your expertise involved, is you kind of know where all those hidden issues that could come from, just like having, again, back to my analogy, horrible one, back to like having a really qualified contractor that's seen it all and can kind of tell you ahead of time what's coming, be prepared for it, and let's take a look at certain things. So I think the analogy, I don't know if it's really great, Maureen, but I think your value is ability to understand and map out that true change process that's beyond just that first initial thought of what you're changing.
Yeah, absolutely. And just having that open line of communication. For example, in the midst of it, you could have a change with a printer. Procurement could source a different printer. You could have a new source for another ingredient, which could have implications on your label. And as Laura mentioned earlier, that could trigger an allergen.
Yeah, absolutely. How important is it? It's, I hear you're going to different departments, you're looking at different aspects. How important is it to have a single source of truth when managing packaging changes?
Oh, I think it's critical to have that single source of truth, because everyone has critical inputs to the process and what those changes should be on packaging. You look at regulatory, and, certain copy has to be 1/16 of an inch in height. And if it's not, that gets rejected, and that's another cycle of artwork change. So, there's so many things that you have to consider. Another example, yesterday, in fact, I received artwork for review, and the print management agency, they picked up it was the right artwork, but it was on the wrong die line. We have 2 production facilities, and they picked up the other production facility die line, and that can't run at that facility.
Yeah, I mean, I'm laughing because we just came out with a feature in Specright that helps companies deal with these variants, where you can look at the spec for each, in this case, each manufacturing facility, and see the artwork for that manufacturing facility.
Yeah.
Because that use case happens all the time, right? Like they're so similar, but they're different enough where it matters. And I'm glad you were able to catch that one. One of the things that we're super excited about, Maureen, is AI. And I think AI can transform every industry. I think we're all passionate about packaging. How do you see the role of new tools like artificial intelligence and other technologies impacting a packaging transition?
I'd like to point out something in terms of current technology at the plant level. And going back to the example that I just talked about, at the plant, many people may not know this, and your listeners would probably be very interested to have this information, is as it goes through the production process, it scans throughout production. So it's set up to scan the UPC code, the 2D code, and also it prints the best before date in a certain area. So usually you can't change the location of those. So when I got that artwork yesterday for that alternate location, I compared it against the current label, and I'm like, something's wrong here. I don't think this is going to work. And so I sent it to our plant engineer and just said, could you please verify if this is going to work? And she got back to me fairly quickly and said, look, our scanners are not going to be able to pick this up. It may have been off by a couple of millimeters, but it would require a lot of programming and expense to be able to use that label. So we have to contact the agency and say, look, could you please pull up the die line and put it on the right one?
Wow.
And in terms of, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. And in terms of AI, I think they're, it's at its infancy. I'm not probably well-versed or well-educated in terms of what it could do, but in terms of, I think it possibly could streamline processes. Most of my clients are in the food space, so I think potentially or hopefully it could, help with formulas and with ingredients and create products that are perhaps more in line with consumer tastes and what their wants are. And hopefully just have CPGs just faster to market.
Yeah, absolutely. We're actually doing just that. Our food and beverage R&D workbench is actually going general availability at the end of the month. So
okay.
We're absolutely looking at taking ingredients. You can reverse engineer a formula. So you could take an existing product, put it in, reverse engineer, and then you tweak it, prompting it. Just like you asked ChatGPT a question, we could have a protein bar, and I could say, make this a cherry flavored protein bar, and it'll reformulate with the cherry. I could say, add more whey protein, and I could start to tweak it, look at different versions, make it vegan, all of these things. And it's so exciting because you're within the application, and you're making a product, you're a formula in seconds. And, it's all about going from the bench brainstorm to bench faster. And so much of that in between is spreadsheets and, kind of legacy systems. And so, having those specs in Specright, being able to do the formulation. And then, Maureen, to your point, if there is a change in an allergen, you've got it tied to your packaging spec. You already know what you've got to go update. And so these things become, very connected in a way that just didn't exist for this industry even 10 years ago. So we agree with you. We think the future is very bright, and it's all about helping people, make more amazing products that we can all benefit from.
No, that's very exciting. I'm very excited to hear about that.
Yeah. So in closing, for companies who are listening, Maureen, who maybe are in the middle of a packaging transition or about to embark on one, what's your biggest piece of advice?
I guess going back to scope of work, just understanding what the changes are And also if you can do multiple changes at the same time, just for efficiency. As we all know, like these packaging transitions, it's very detail oriented, it's tedious, and it takes a lot of resources across the entire organization. It hits your supply chain, your finance team, your marketing, sales, and also, your finance and e-com teams. Just about everyone is involved in these packaging transitions, or it has an impact on them. And also, in closing, in addition to managing packaging transitions, Complete Acuity also offers value-added services such as creating portfolio summaries once your transition is completed, digital collections for, like your pack shots and assets that you share with your e-com sales marketing team. So, and that's just it. It's just to make the teams more efficient, because we always get those ongoing requests. Can you send me a pack shot of the new packaging? Can you send me, what's our asset ID for this? Because I need to share it with a retailer for, a tab or something. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. That's great. I remember Matthew being at Pack Expo one year, and someone came up to me and said, yeah, sometimes I have to go to the store to see what our latest packaging is. And I thought, how is that even possible? But Maureen, those points are very well taken, and I think spot on. Want to thank you for joining the podcast, Maureen. Keep up the great work out there, making those transitions a little bit more seamless and helping us as consumers make sure that we're safe first and foremost. So we appreciate your time and hope to see you out in the field soon.
Great. Thanks very much.
Excited to be again off the shelf with Matt Dingy. Matt, excited to be with you today. What you got for us today?
Good afternoon. So today I went across the pond to the United Kingdom, and I have what's called Cafe Switch, the True Kick by Dewey Egberts. And so this is the outer molded fiber secondary, and then the interior is this connected pods, which I'll try to show all that you see here. And the idea on the instructions is that try to do as close up as you can.
Yep.
Yes, I need to turn it maybe this way. So you're gonna kind of squeeze these two capsules, and there's a connecting channel there that you see that would squeeze out here into your coffee cup, and you would just add water. So, and they're kind of marketing this. Where is the writing on this? Actually, the back kind of describes it a little bit, but basically a pump and a foam, and you squeeze it out and you just add water. So again, this is from 2007 from the United Kingdom. So kind of a, I guess in that genre of like instant quick coffee, kind of in a different way. Than
how many did it? Yeah, how many did it hold? It's hard to tell.
So it looks like it is 2, 4, 6. 6 units per carton.
Wow, that's I haven't seen anything like that. I don't even recall if I remembered it back then, but certainly an interesting idea. And you think about how much time and energy went into creating that concept, and then not just creating the concept, but making it where the packaging works to actually allow the product to commingle, mix, and then obviously be inserted to your water. And then it's interesting. Curious, why they chose, something that was pretty revolutionary at the time, which is the molded fiber, outer casing versus, just a standard folding carton or something else at the time. So obviously without the creators around us, it'd be hard to guess why they did that, but certainly a very interesting and actually extremely technical total package. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's, they had to really go into an alternate packaging format and really, like you said, technically achieve this kind of, for whatever the reason for the product, the combination of the two chambers together, and kind of offer that in a quick, easy kind of instant coffee sort of use occasion, I think is very interesting. And that drove them to a lot of different packaging choices that are not typically what we see in that category.
Yeah, and I think it's different globally, but historically, at least in the U.S., the interest in the instant coffee kind of went through its waves, and it was, something that was less appreciated. And then it went obviously with a much higher end product today, and then obviously with pods and other technologies. And so it sounds like pretty revolutionary at the time, in the 2007 timeframe, to have a mixed content package in the instant coffee arena. And the actual outer packaging looks pretty fancy, so it was looking for a higher clientele. So very great product from the collection. I'd love you to just give a shout out to the collection, Matt.
Yeah, so it's a Michigan State New Product Works collection with over 150,000 packages across the decades, across categories, that are organized for you to look at, to get data concerning, and also to just use as general inspiration, as we've seen, for various categories and uses of packaging.
Well, always my favorite segment. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you. Take care.